Okay, so I do a various series of how LENS Neurofeedback can help different aspects of people's wellness and mental health. And so this time I'm focusing on anxiety. And you can go to my website or tricenergycounselingtn.com, or you can go to our event page by searching our event bright page by searching Trice Energy Counseling, and you can see the different webinars that are coming up, or visit the website to see past webinars where I've covered different topics like trauma, ADHD, and some other categories. So with that, getting started here about LENS. Okay, we already talked kind of about that. Okay, so I am Victoria Valdez. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am the owner and operational director of Trice Energy Counseling in Brentwood, Tennessee. I've got, in addition to being a neurofeedback provider myself, a LENS neurofeedback provider, I have an additional technician who also provides neurofeedback, and all of my staff is bilingual. And so we can serve a Spanish-speaking community as well as an English-speaking community. I personally specialize in providing mental health treatment for children, teens, and adult women in the state of Tennessee. I'm also a parent coach and a wellness educator and the leader of the Spanish-speaking therapist group in the state of Tennessee. I'm a mom myself of 3. I'm also a wife, and I love Latin dancing. I used to teach it before I was a therapist, so something fun I like to do. All righty. So I like to start with about my personal journey and my family's personal journey of why I brought LENS, because I think it's a really good foundation on why I thought it was so important to add it to my practice. So a really quick summary is that I got introduced to LENS by another colleague of mine, and through a center that came out called Brain Harmony. They came out and talked to us as a group of therapists. And my brother from Mexico, who had a traumatic brain injury, came to visit. And he had a significant brain injury when he was a kid. He had to relearn how to walk and talk, and just relearn everything again, like if he were a baby. And that was about the age of 13. And so he was really interested. I told him about the neurofeedback. He got the neurofeedback, and it was really life-changing for him. He had 8 sessions, and he was just amazed how he felt that he could compute better. His brain was processing at a faster rate, where he always said he felt like he just wasn't at 100%. And so that made me get more interested. Fast forward, I didn't quite get on and jump on to try it for myself. There were a few years went by. And I like to call ourselves a family of ADHD. I have ADHD, and 2 of my children do as well. We decided to give last summer LENS Neurofeedback a try, and I'm so glad that we did. Some of the things we went in for ADHD. One of my kiddos was struggling with some anxiety and depression, and it was a huge game changer. Obviously, it was such a life-changing experience for us that I brought it to our private practice here at Trice Energy Counseling as soon as I could. And as I couldn't get it in here fast enough. Some of the changes that we saw from the ADHD perspective was improvement in mental clarity, improved motivation, improved concentration. Our moods were better. We had a reduction of that irritability, of that low frustration tolerance with ADHD. Just lots of highly motivated, able to get things done and focus so much better. As little as 6 to 7 sessions of LENS neurofeedback. For my kiddo who was dealing with anxiety and depression, it was a total game changer. My kiddo had that typical, they were isolating, they were irritated, they were feeling depressed, lots of cognitive negativity thoughts. After about 3 or 4 sessions, totally different kiddo. I felt like I had my kiddo back before they were feeling depressed and anxious. Family members were like, what's been going on? There's such a sudden change in a great way. What are you guys doing? He's night and day. Teachers reporting changes, and just as little as 4 to 5 sessions. So that is my personal journey of why we decided to bring LENS, and why I'm a huge advocate of giving it a try for clients and for people's wellness. It's amazing. So now we're going to talk about what it is, right? Basically, what LENS stands for is Low Energy Neurofeedback. It's different than traditional neurofeedback, and I'll explain a little bit why. It's an EEG that works a little bit more rapidly than traditional neurofeedback, and it gives multiple different low energy radio waves for a few seconds at a time, up to longer durations. Each client is different. And then those signals are sent to your brain. They stimulate it, they alert it, they're resetting your brain to a normal state of regulating emotions. And your body's nervous system is more calm. It was created by Dr. Len Osh, and it's been around for over 30 years. Dr. Len Osh actually was a traditional neurofeedback provider for many years. And his story was, he kind of said, there's got to be a faster, more efficient way. And that's where he came up with the LENS Neurofeedback. So there is this really great neurofeedback provider, Dr. Larson's book, The Healing Power of Neurofeedback. I really love that book. I recommend reading it. He talks, I love the way he says this. He talks about each individual having their own most highly functioning state of being, personal wellness in their brain and body. And that most of us are born with that most highly level personal functioning body and brain. But then something happens along the way. There is a traumatic brain injury. There is trauma exposure. There is a mold exposure. There's so many things, environmental, systemically, nurturing, family, grief, things that happen that just shift the way our brain was working to begin with, somewhere along the way. And so the LENS goal is to help your brain get back to that most highly functioning well-being, that state, restoring your brain's ability to be flexible and to get that that level of functioning where you were before at some point. Maybe not all the way back to that 100%, because there's some conditions that won't, right? But getting you feeling better at a better level and functioning as quick as we can. The cool thing about LENS Neurofeedback is I get a lot of parents who are worried about, putting electrodes or things into their children's head. I'm a parent myself. I get that. But the cool thing is LENS is 1,000 times less. The waves from the LENS system is 1,000 times less than what is emitted through a cell phone. And so far with the research in the last over 30 years, there has not been any adverse effect that has ever popped up that we've known of. So what does LENS help? Truly, this is not an exhausting list of everything that LENS helps, because there's always just things popping up of new things that we didn't even think of trying with LENS, that clients will come in and, hey, we want to give it a try, see if it works or not. I'm a part of a weekly kind of practitioners, global practitioners, LENS Neurofeedback, what do they call it? Like consultation group. And we get to learn about other cases where we didn't even think that LENS was we didn't even think about trying it, and people getting improvements. So what LENS can improve? LENS can improve any of the following: addiction issues, migraines, sleep abnormalities, if you're having trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, things like that, not getting well rested, not getting into REM sleep, well rested sleep, TBIs, cognition issues, neurological issues. It improves motivation, fatigue. It helps with optimizing your performance, building that confidence, mood issues, anger and irritability, panic attacks. It helps with processing trauma. It can improve, it's not curing ADHD, but it can definitely improve cognitive level of functioning with ADHD. PTSD, improve other anxiety issues such as OCD. It really helps with depression, that emotional reactivity, postpartum depression, and again, really helps with motivation. And again, the FDA has approved the device as a stress improvement system or stress reduction. So if you're feeling it's a really relaxed state, and I'll go into how it feels in a little bit, but it really relaxes that nervous system. So let's get into the software, or the system actually. So what I have pictured here is, you'll see a little box in the middle. So if you look at the picture that's got the wirings, lots of wirings, not the picture of the TV. So if you look in the middle, there's what's called a neurobit box. That box is the device that connects the computer to the system, and it allows the neurofeedback that we're getting from your mind, from your brain and body, to go through the neurofeedback into the system. And then on your, if you look at the wires that are blue, white, and black and green that are kind of wrapped together, that is the actual neurofeedback for the head lens, because there are two types of lens neurofeedback. You have the head applications, and then you have the body sensors, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But as you see that there's two round, small, flat sensors, and those are the sensors where we place on the 21 different sites of the head. And that's where we put the applications. The little clips, I call them the jumper cables. Those go on each one of your ears. All of this is painless. There's no irritation. There's stainless steel. So, no issues there. So very lightweight clips. And then, for example, whenever we start a LENS neurofeedback session with a brand new client, we always start in the starting sites right here, FP1 and FP2. That's our starting point. We always start there. And so what would happen is we'd put the sensors on each side right here. We'd clip on here, and then we would be able to start the system. We'd turn the neurofeed box on, and the system would already be up with your file, and then we would start running the system. And I'll talk more a little bit about that, or the program for the LENS neurofeedback. We do apply, we will put a little bit of witch hazel to clean the surface areas of the skin, and then we also put a Neuro Prep cream that feels a little bit like a spa, or like a, one of those, I like sugar lotions where it's like kind of crystallized and grainy. And we put that on the earlobes and wherever we're going to place the sensors on your head to kind of clean the oils. And then we use what's called condensation cream to stick the sensors onto the skin and into the hair or the scalp. And so those are the other things. Now, if you move over and you look at the wrapped wires that are red, green, white, brown, and black and have a little stickers on them, those are the body sensors, and I'll tell you what they're used for a little bit further down. And a lot of clients like to use them for pain, but a lot of times we will not start with a client on their head for LENS, and we'll start on their body away from the head. And I'll explain that a little bit later, why we would do something like that. But those are the body sensors. They have these little stickers, and we place them on. The client can put it on the body themselves, or the provider can assist with that. We put it on feet, back, or shoulders. There's 5 sensors. And then that would provide the biofeedback into the system. So the TV image is the neurofeedback system that is being mirrored from the laptop onto the TV in my office, so that you can watch in real time the neurofeedback that is actively happening on your body, whether it's the body sensors or your head. So you're watching it in real time, and then you're watching that there's a brief recording of the neurofeedback, and then the neurofeedback gets placed right back in to your body. And that's where we're helping the brain and body facilitate change. Well, actually, before I get to the mapping and the 21 sites, I just wanted to say, so one of my favorite things about the training, this is not like something I came up with as a metaphor, but it was a really beautiful example. The way to describe kind of what LENS is doing to recording the neurofeedback and putting it back into your body is, I love the example of, imagine that you're walking down the street, and right before you went to a walk, you had this really delicious lunch, and it was really, really delicious. And maybe you've got some food on your face, but you don't really notice. You don't feel that it's there. You don't notice, but maybe other people might see it. And the only way that you notice that there's a little bit of food on your face is if you go in front of a mirror. Now you're standing in front of a mirror and you see, oh my gosh, I've got this food or this stain on my tooth or on my face. Now I can do something about it. And then you rub it off or you clean it, right? So that is a beautiful analogy of what the LENS neurofeedback is doing. It's recording your own brain's feedback, and then it's putting it right back, mirroring it right back into your brain and showing your brain, hey, you got a lot of worry going on right now, or you're feeling, there's some depression, or your working memory isn't very strong, or your balance and coordination is not functioning the way you want it to be or need it to be. And then the brain goes, oh, thanks so much. Now I can do something about it. I can autocorrect or self-correct those issues. And that is the beauty of the LENS Neurofeedback. And a little bit more about the LENS Neurofeedback is what we're measuring. If you're not familiar with EEGs, is on the head sensors in the body. What we're measuring is alpha, theta, beta. I forget the other one. But those are the waves that we're actually getting a mean average, is what the system's doing, a mean average of those sites, wherever, if it's body or head. And then it's computing that and putting it on a brain map. And I'll show you what that is. But that's what it's doing. It's gathering the mean average and then putting that biofeedback back into your brain. So you'll see here a little bit more when I'm talking about on the top, you'll see in the mean total amplitude. On the side, you see the microvolts. So this is the map of a 9-year-old child with ADHD. And there are 21 sites. And what is being demonstrated here is the bars, the height of the bars, where you see up to 70, 0 to 70. So those are the amplitude, the strength of the brainwave or the biofeedback. And so what we're looking for a healthy balance is an amplitude that measures between 15 and 30. So you can see here, if you look all the way to the left at T5 is well below that 15 to 30. And then if you look at the one at the very end, excuse me, FP2 is shown all the way at 70. So that one's way high, right? So what we want to do is we want to bring those bars down to between 15 and 30. So the blue color on these brain maps, what that means is that's a representation of the brain's flexibility or variability. And what we want, a healthy amount ratios, we want from the black bar, whatever the microvolts on the black bar is, we want 35% of it to be blue, because that is going to be a healthy amount of flexibility for that area. And then the black representance on the bar is the brain's rigidity. So we want the brain to be rigid because that's how the learning sticks. We want those systems to be in place. We want those regulatory systems to be rigid, to know how to breathe, to know how to walk, to know how to do those things, right? But we also want our brain to be placid or flexible, right? We want it to be able to mold and change. And so you can see here, just by looking at some of the bars here, that we've got areas, T5 and T6 appear that have very little blue, almost zero blue. If you look at P4, very little blue. And then if you look at FP2, you might see that there's a lot of blue. And so again, we're trying to get those bars between 15 and 30, and then the blue 35%. So this is what's called a suppression map. The suppression map, the orange, what that means is the brain, those are the suppressed parts of the brain that aren't going to have that balanced blue ratio to black. And so those are the areas that are suppressed. And then if you see any pink on this bar, there is no pink, but pink is a representation of hyper suppressed. So that means that it is over functioning. That's when you'll see the bar really high or way too much blue. And what we track is we want to see all of the orange turn to blue. So when you come into our office, you get this little workbook and you'll have a copy of this map. And this map will indicate, kind of help you guide as a client, like, oh, what is T3? What is F8? Like, what is that showing? So if we look at T3 here and we go on to what site is corresponded with on this brain map, we see that T3 is regarding verbal memory. And we can see that that person's verbal memory, the blue, not much flexibility, and it looks like it's below the 15 to 30 mark. Now, if we look at FPZ is general decision making. So that one is between the 15 and 30 mark, but the flexibility there is very low. So what I like to tell clients, sometimes they'll see, like, if we look at FP2, which is this one right here. That executive functioning area right here, this one is associated with maybe some anxiety, impulsivity, addiction, restraint of impulse. Some clients will be like, Victoria, does that mean I have addiction issues? And I like to gently say, if the shoe fits for you, then wear it. Meaning, if you struggle and you're struggling with some addiction issues, and then that reflection in the bar indicates that it's suppressed, then yes, that might be, why it's demonstrating that way. Let's say you don't have any addiction issues. An FP2 bar, the flexibility blue percentage is very low. Maybe it's because you're dealing with some anxiety or impulsivity, and it's not related to addiction. So just knowing that when you look at these sites and what they're correlated with, it doesn't necessarily mean you're having an issue with everything listed on that site. Okay, so what I wanted to do over the next few slides is just give a quick, brief overview of what anxiety is, what are some symptoms, and then jump right into what my clients have reported or parents have reported about their improvements with getting LENS in regarding to anxiety. So anxiety is, and this is a quote from the American Pediatric Association. So generalized anxiety involves persistent, excessive worry that interferes with daily activities. So this is that ongoing worry. It's constant. It's usually paired with other physical symptoms. People say they feel restless, they're on edge, they're fatigued, they can't sleep. They feel like they're on high alert, they're tensed. And then we know there's, like panic disorder, which you can feel you're sweating. You might feel dizzy when you're in full-blown panic. So those are, and again, anxiety, clinical, everyone deals with a little bit of anxiety, but clinical anxiety is that persistent every day. It's getting in the way of you, your normal everyday functioning, or your child's or your loved one's everyday functioning. So an overview of the types of anxiety: you have a GAD, or generalized anxiety disorder. And that is just kind of what it says. You have generalized clinical anxiety, that everything's kind of a worry trigger. It could be getting up and getting dressed. Is what I'm wearing okay? It could be you're in a social environment. Is what I'm about to say is okay? There's just a worry about getting on a plane, worry about this. So it could be anything. And then you have panic disorder, which I kind of talked about in the descriptor, where you're having panic attacks frequently, because sometimes you don't even know why it's been triggered, but oftentimes there's a triggering environmental or situational thing that is going on, causing that panic. And you're feeling a variation of, intense sweating, breathing difficulties. Lots of people get to the point where they're feeling dizzy. They may feel like they're going to pass out. Their heart rate is increased, tingling throughout their body, some indicators of a possible panic attack. And then the umbrella of phobias and specific phobias is being so afraid of something that you're avoiding it to the most. Like, it's okay. Some people are afraid of like spiders or snakes, and we want to avoid those dangers from getting bitten, things like that. But phobia is taking it to the next level, where you are paralyzed. You are on the ceiling, I like to call it. Like, there is no way you can even look at a picture of whatever it is. And then we have agoraphobia, and that's kind of the fear of leaving your home, a fear of things, or not being able to, back up, not being able to just not feel safe in a situation or an environment that you're in. And then you have social anxiety disorder, which is that's in being in social environments, in the classroom setting. It could be the work, it could be at the mall, store, things like that, airports. And then separation anxiety is that intense anxiety around being away from a loved one or someone that you care about, that something bad might happen to them, or you might not have access to them anymore. And then selective mutism, that is, in a nutshell, the intense anxiety or fear around speaking in a situation to where that person or individual feels paralyzed in that moment that they cannot speak. These are very, very quick overviews of these anxieties. So definitely you can go to your own provider and deep dive on that, but this is a quick overview. Here's not an all exhaustive list, but some anxiety symptoms that are common: the sleep disruption, avoidance of activities or places or individual situations, frequent negative distortions like negative thoughts. I like to tell my kiddos and teens that I'm working with that, anxiety doesn't have nothing good to say. Like it's not telling you, yes, you can do it. It's telling you this sucks or you suck or this bad thing is going to happen, right? So that's another way to kind of explain, right? Negative distortions. You can feel distracted because your body's on high vigilance. It's scanning the area. It's what is it? Where is that worry? Where is that trigger, right? So it can be really difficult to concentrate. Frequent, persistent, constant nervousness, intrusive worry thoughts that are happening out of nowhere, replay. And that persistent, constant nervousness can be visible by somebody or not. And what I mean by that, a person can have anxiety and they're hyper aroused or they're hypo. So hyper aroused, meaning you might see that fidgetiness or that looking around, a little bit of rocking, and then you might see someone who has anxiety and look at them and think, wow, they look so calm and relaxed. There's no way they have anxiety, but it's all inside their head. It's going on in here. And on their outward appearance, they may not look anxious. So that's more of a hypo-aroused person. You might feel increased heart rate, that sweating, rapid or shallow breathing, trembling, body tingling, headaches, tense body. You're being more vigilant, GI issues, stomach issues. You experience mild diarrhea or stomach pain, tingling in your stomach, upset stomach, vomiting, fatigue, and tiredness. So this is kind of not an all exhaustive list. You'll hear me see that a lot, but just what clients have said at self-reports and parent reports from improvements within the first 48 hours, and I should say extended to 5 to 7 days. So overall, clients who are kids or adults who come in to get LENS applications, they're feeling after a treatment, overall, they feel very relaxed. Sometimes while I'm doing applications or my provider, you can just see their whole body just kind of melt. And sometimes I'll ask, do you notice anything different after we just did these 2 sites, for example? They're like, no, I don't think I feel anything, but you can see the physical relaxation. Sometimes clients don't even notice it's happening. And that can last up to 5 to 7 days. The mental clarity, they have thinking clearly. I've had clients say, wow, I haven't been able to think this clearly in years. That mental fog has lifted. They're feeling more motivated. It's easier for them to problem solve because they can think more clearly, and that excessive worry thoughts isn't jumbling up that problem solving. They have improved focus or concentration and attention. They have that increased relaxed state, that ability to follow through on things because that worry is not so overlooming. They feel less irritated. They have less thoughts, less anxious thoughts, reduction panic attack, increased confidence, decrease on that trigger response of whatever that anxiety trigger is. They feel less anxious around it. Being able to just go with the flow with unexpected changes, anxiety does not like that change or not knowing what's going to happen. And so clients with anxiety report feeling, wow, I could handle that. I could go with the flow, right? And then the increased ability to follow through on task. I kind of already mentioned that. But that's what our clients are saying from LENS. I'm going to check. I haven't checked the comment section. I didn't hear a ding to indicate anyone had any questions. So let me check really quick. Okay. All right. So here's what I want to talk about: side effects of overtreatment. So as I said earlier in this presentation, up to date for 2023, we don't have any really adverse side effects or reactions that really harm anybody. But I call them side effects because it's important to talk about. I don't like clients to come in and have experience something and not be given a heads up. So within the first 48-hour window, what could happen with the client is what we call overtreatment. An overtreatment is when the client, we'll do session one. The very first time we do an intake with a client, we've done assessment paperwork, goals, what are you looking to get better at, all of those things. And now we're going to do an application. Part of LENS is matching that person's individual physiological response. But we don't know how they're going to respond to LENS neurofeedback until we actually do the first application. But we have a guide. It's the questionnaire where we are measuring central nervous system responses and other questions. Are they anxious? Are they more sensitive? Meaning, do they have light sensitivity? Do they have more sensitive to weather changes? So if a person, based on their intake, presents as more sensitive, then the idea is less is more. So we want to give them the lowest amount of neurofeedback possible. That's when that body lens application comes in place. We're going to stay the farthest away from the head as possible. So we might put sensors on the feet. But let's just say that a client filled out their paperwork, we're at the intake, and they didn't really present based on their paperwork that they were very sensitive. And they presented as very resilient, hardy. And that's kind of maybe how we got a feel too in the first session, right? So now we go put the application, and we'll always start with a toe in the water approach. We're just going to do these 2 sites and see what happens. When we do that, if the client's paperwork indicated that they were not very sensitive, that might happen. What will happen is that they might experience an overtreatment. And let's say that really they were very sensitive, but for whatever reason, when they were answering those questions, it didn't indicate that on their paperwork. And when we talked to them in the intake, it didn't indicate. They didn't say they had anxiety. If a client comes in with anxiety, we're going to do maybe body lens first. So let's say we didn't know, right? The client wasn't really self-aware. And we do these sites. So what happens is a possible overtreatment. The overtreatment is that client who maybe does have anxiety and wasn't aware of it, might be either super, super tired or super wired or very energized, meaning they might not be able to sleep very well the first 2 nights, disrupted sleeps. And remember, this is all over the first 48 hours. They might have, if the client is already very reactive coming in, maybe I like the example of someone who has really intense road rage. They're already kind of baseline irritated. And then they get LENS. And we, again, we don't know how the body's going to respond until after the first 48 hours. They might feel more irritable in those first 48 hours. They might have a temporary increase of anxiousness if there's someone who is already anxious, or they might have no change at all. And when the no change at all happens, that means that neurofeedback application was too much on the body system, and the body didn't really know how to handle that. So it was just no change. That can happen as well. So the person who does get that first 48-hour overtreatment, integration eventually does happen of that feedback. And so after the 48-hour period, clients will then report, oh, I felt so much better. I had a reduction in anxiety disorders. Panic attacks or anxious days. I felt more deeper sleep, more rested, right? That's after that 48-hour window, if they got an overtreatment. And so even though the overtreatment might make a client feel a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit more anxious, or a little sleep disruption, the client will usually improve once it's that phase, 48 hours have passed. And then again, I talked a little bit already about what happens, why no change. And then the other thing that's really important, I put this under the overtreatment category, but to not make another slide, but medication side effects. So if a client is coming in with anxiety, we already know, and we've seen them 6 times, and now we've been doing 4 sites at a time, and they come in, and on the 6th session afterwards, they're like, oh my gosh, Victoria, I felt more wired up this time. Something that we have clients do that are taking medication, we have them get their list of their side effects and be reviewing them weekly, because as your body and brain is feeling better and feeling less anxious, oftentimes you don't need the same amount of medication. And so what we do is we ask you to tell your provider, we want to work together with medication providers and psychiatrics and doctors on to let them know, we tell clients, let them know you're feeling better. We never tell clients to get off of meds, and we never tell them to and double up their dose or anything like that. We just want them to talk to their provider about if they're feeling better. Let's see what we can do about that. Because if you're feeling better and you're taking the same amount of medication, you might be experiencing side effects from that. And that is not a response of over-treatment necessarily. It's because you're feeling better and you really don't need that same a dose anymore, depending on what your provider says on medication, right? The other thing is, as the client does improve with LENS, they might need less LENS. So if we were doing 6 sessions, or 6 applications, we might need 3 next time. So it's really a balance of us trying to match your body's own physiological response. So I get this question a lot is, how long do the changes last, right? And how often do I need sessions until I feel better? So children and adolescents, their brains are more flexible. They've got more neuroplasticity. We have that as adults too, but children and adolescents are prime for brain change and being more flexible. So they need less sessions typically. On average, 3, 6, 11 sessions, and that's it. With my own personal example with my son, as little as 3 sessions, he was feeling so much better. And he, I think, had a total of 7 before we didn't go back anymore. And part of that reason was that they were so full, they're so booked out 7 days a week, this provider, because of the success of LENS, that it was really hard to continue neurofeedback with them. But now that we have the system, my family, my children, myself, my husband are regularly treated weekly, if not twice a week, with the system. So again, adolescents, they're changed more rapidly. So 6 to 11 sessions. Adults, right, our brains are a little less flexible, on average 11 to 20 sessions, depending on what the goal we're looking for. The only time we'll need more sessions is when you have complex issues, complex trauma, complex grief and trauma, like childhood trauma, and you're an adult and you had very severe childhood trauma, or neurological issues. So we're thinking like autism, ADHD, Parkinson's, and other neurological issues. Those type of issues, I'm going to speak to ADHD since I personally have ADHD. It's not going to cure, LENS is not going to cure ADHD, but it can definitely improve it. And because it's a neurological issue, I like to use the example of if you have a field that is way overgrown with tall grass and you're trying to cut a path for the very first time, it's really difficult. The first day you walk through, it's going to bounce back the tall grass. And it isn't until you go over that path over and over and over again until there is now a well-beaten path where it's not going to go back, right? So that's how I like to use that example with the neurofeedback. So with neurological issues or more complex, it might take 40 to 100 sessions for the neurological changes to stick, because what we know from research on neurofeedback is it does promote neurological growth and new neurological connections. And that takes time for it to stick. So your body and your brain naturally wants to go back to where it was. So those would take longer. And also life happens. I have clients who have found me as a provider for LENS that, I got LENS 3 years ago, and then these certain things happened. I've been feeling really stressed and I just needed a little bit of tune-up. They came in for 2 sessions and they were done. They felt back. They felt better again, right? So those are also, things that happen. Life happens and you might have to retouch, right? The other thing is when a LENS application is done and there's improvements, sometimes we call it the wane off period, right? They might last the improvements from 5 to 7 days, and then it might try to go back a little bit to where it was before. And so that's why typically the next slide talks about how frequency level is that we typically recommend at the beginning to come weekly. And then see how you feel. If you feel good after those 7 days, let's try every other week. Wow, that change really stayed, that neurological change. You're feeling really good. Let's try 1 time a month. Okay, you're good. we'll see you next time, or see you whenever you need us again. That's kind of how that works, right? See you later. So our agency, you can look up, neurofeedback rates across the country, the state of Tennessee, however you want to. Our intake, it's going to be a variation of fees. We try to make it as affordable as possible for individuals. Our intake is 150. It's a 45 to 50 minutes, and we'll do the intake processing, goal setting, going over your intake paperwork, see how resilient or see what your body's physiological response might be. And then we do that first application. Every session after that is $75 for weekly sessions. And they're approximately 25 minutes, sometimes shorter, because LENS applications are actually really rapid. We start with 2, right? And we work ourselves all the way to the back of the head. Some clients are done after 4 sessions. They don't need to see us. They might not get a full brain map. Other people might get a full brain map within 4 sessions of all 21 sites. And so what a technician does is we start, let's say you're somebody that needs 6 sites. We'll go here, right? We'll go here, here, and then maybe we'll go here, for example. Okay, you might get an application just 1 second. We'll put them right here. It'll run for 1 second. Ding, it's done. We move it to the next 2 sites. 1 second, ding, it's done. So typically you're in and out, very rapid, which is very different from traditional neurofeedback, where you might take longer times and you're manipulating a system in front of you and trying to do the brain training, versus in the LENS Neurofeedback, you just sit there. We've got fidgets. You can close your eyes and just relax, or you can mess with the fidgets. You can look at the screen. You don't really have to do anything. So it's very fast and easy. And then I'm going to go ahead and pause for questions. I'm going to sit here on, these are some Google reviews I've had for my Trice Energy counseling, where we've had clients come through. I've got this one here that says, they offer LENS. They're feeling, this person was having anxiety, and that now they're feeling way better. They're having more sunny days and gloom. This one was a very extensive one. They talked about being able to perform better. They're a little bit, less cranky. How their family members, right, reported that they seemed to be in a better mood. They're more motivated. They're feeling less anxious. You've got someone else who said just within 2 rounds, right, or 2 LENS treatments sessions, reduced headaches. They were deeper sleeping. So just some of the feedback that clients have been experiencing, some really good experience with LENS. But does anyone have any questions? Okay, let's see here. Well, if you don't have any questions, I'm just going to pause the recording or stop the recording. I'm not going to get off the call, because I do want to say something else, but I'm going to get off the recording just a minute here.